So, as most of you, I assume, already know, Donald Trump was convicted last month on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records, and his sentence is going to be imposed on July 11th by Judge Juan Merchan. We will be covering that live. Today, I thought it would be useful and maybe interesting to explore what sentence Donald Trump is likely to get, including whether he will be given time in prison. We'll also explore what is the most likely scenario here. Now, in theory, each of the 34 counts that Donald Trump was convicted of has a maximum prison sentence of 4 years, meaning he could go, if you go no further in your analysis, could go to prison for 34 times 4 or 136 years. Not only is this obviously unlikely, as the judge would sentence him concurrently for these counts rather than consecutively, there's also a 20-year maximum consecutive sentence in New York for Class E felonies. So forget about 4 times 36. Forget about any number bigger than 20. Now, a 20-year sentence would effectively be a life sentence for a 78-year-old like Trump. Actuarially speaking, he may live an incredibly long life, but statistically speaking, actuarially speaking, a 20-year sentence for a 78-year-old would be a life sentence. But realistically, if Trump is incarcerated, he is likely looking at more like 6 months to 2 years. But the broader question is, will he be given any kind of prison sentence at all? And it really isn't a clear yes or no based on all of the facts that we have right now. ABC News interviewed 14 different lawyers about this. One of the best ways to get 15 different answers is to ask 14 different lawyers a question. Okay, that's a little saying I picked up in working with lawyers over time. 5 of the 14 lawyers believed a sentence involving prison was likely. 7 of the 14 lawyers said a prison sentence was unlikely, and 2 said it's really a toss-up. So let's explore some of the reasons why Judge Merchan may not sentence to Trump to any prison time. And then we'll talk about why he might sentence Trump to prison. And then we'll talk about some of the other potential consequences that could be faced. So let's make the case that Trump will not be sent to prison and figure out whether we think that this is a strong case. First is precedent. Trump's case hinges on falsifying business records. It's a charge that historically results in prison sentences only in about 1 out of 10 cases in the state of New York. Now, that's based on an extensive review of 10,000 past cases of falsifying business records. So the statistical backdrop of 10% prison time for falsifying business record convictions in New York suggests a leaning towards being more lenient, especially for first-time offenders convicted of nonviolent crimes. And that gets us to item number 2. As crazy as it is to say, Trump is a first-time offender. Despite extensive legal battles, controversies, being found civilly liable for all sorts of different things, the defamation case, the using his foundation or charity's money as a slush fund and having it shut down, despite Trump's habitual wrongdoing for decades, he has never been convicted of any criminal offenses prior to this case. And in New York, where sentencing guidelines often favor leniency for first-time offenders, Trump's clean record, and I know it sounds crazy to say that, Trump's clean record would be a mitigating factor against the judge imposing some kind of custodial sentence. So Trump is facing 3 other criminal trials. He is, of course, innocent in those until proven guilty. Notice how this is a law and order show. We don't go around saying lock up whoever because we don't like them if they have not actually been convicted and a sentence of prison would be warranted. But you can't use the fact that Trump is being prosecuted in 3 other criminal cases in considering a harsher sentence for him here. So we have those 2 factors. Number 3, Trump's advanced age. At 78, Trump's age is a practical and a moral consideration for the court. I've said before, even when they get these Nazis in their 70s, 80s, 90s, I have said, you don't not charge them and prosecute them because of their age, but like anybody else, judges can consider age in sentencing, and that is fine and expected when it comes to Trump. Imprisoning an elderly individual of any kind raises some ethical questions about the appropriateness and the effectiveness of custodial sentences, especially for nonviolent offenses like falsifying business records. Trump's also not a flight risk. Now, I know it's crazy to say he has a plane. How is he not a flight risk? He could literally fly away. Well, yeah, okay, but we're building up the case here for not imprisoning Trump. And you can make the argument, and I think it's a fair argument, that as a former president, as a public figure, a Trump status minimizes the risk of flying and physically evading a sentence. He's trying, after all, to become president again. So it will be clear where he is much of the time. And then there are also some logistical challenges. The prospect of imprisoning a former president introduces some unprecedented logistical complexities. It's not an impossibility. But if you want to make the case that imprisoning Trump is not the right thing, you can say, listen, Trump's Secret Service protection alone poses some challenges for a correctional facility that's unaccustomed to managing people of such high prominence. So how do you ensure Trump's safety, separation from the general prison population, compliance with security protocols? You need resources, you need coordination. You could use that as an argument to say he should not be imprisoned. Now, there's another argument, and we'll make it in a moment, but I'm building up the case for no jail time for Trump. There's also the possibility of the appearance of election interference, and appearance is the key word. The timing of Trump's sentencing, months before the 2024 election, days before he would officially be made the nominee at the Republican National Convention, which we will be covering, could raise questions about a perceived political motivation. Any decision to imprison Trump could be interpreted as an attempt to influence public opinion or disrupt his political ambitions. He's saying that it is. He's been saying it all along. And it's conceivable that Judge Merchan might consider that in his decision. There's also the argument of a double standard. Even if it can be argued that any other criminal would go to prison for these crimes, Trump may not, simply because he's a billionaire and a former president. Judge Merchan, when ruling on Trump's gag order violations, even said, the last thing I want to do is put you in jail. You are the former president of the United States and possibly the next president. And in fairness, Merchan may reconsider that statement now that Trump has been convicted and it's not just a gag order violation. And then lastly, there's a technicality. Even if Trump gets a prison sentence, he would likely remain free pending appeal, meaning he is very unlikely to actually be imprisoned before the 2024 election, even if he is given a prison sentence. If he is elected president and can delay serving his sentence, there would be 4 more years of appeals and adjustments. And so that would be an argument for saying, let's not even open that door. Okay, now you might have heard the argument for not imprisoning Trump and saying, David, that's a terrible argument. Those are terrible arguments. Those are very weak arguments. Well, let's now look at reasons why Trump should be sent to prison and why he might be. First is the seriousness of the case. This is the most serious case of falsifying business records in New York history because it arguably impacted the outcome of the 2016 election. While 90% of falsifying business record cases don't lead to incarceration in New York, as I mentioned earlier, you could make a very good case that as the most serious case of falsifying business records in New York history, this should be in the 10% that does warrant a prison sentence. And that is a very compelling argument. Number 2, throughout the trial, Trump demonstrated not only a lack of remorse, he demonstrated defiance of court directives. He repeatedly violated gag orders. He attacked and assailed the judge and those associated with the court. And Trump's total lack of remorse and complete failure to acknowledge any wrongdoing is something that judges can legitimately consider in sentencing. And that, if considered here, would say, listen, Trump continues to claim this is all rigged, that he did nothing wrong. He doesn't respect the court. He's learned nothing. That would be a good reason to say, well, I'm going to err on the side of making Trump part of the 10% that does get prison for falsifying business records. There's also the question of deterrence. It is clear that only prison time, actually in a prison cell, would be an actual punishment or deterrent for Trump. Fines, Probation, that's not going to effectively do anything to Trump. So if Judge Merchan wants to hold Trump accountable in any real way, I think it can be argued the only real way is incarceration. There's also the possibility of exploring other possible penalties. In addition to imprisonment, Judge Merchan has other sentencing options at his disposal. You could see a suspended sentence that lets Trump avoid prison time on the condition that he doesn't commit further offenses, complies with court conditions. That would be a way maybe to recognize what you did is grave enough to get a prison sentence, but we're going to have a structured framework to monitor you without immediately incarcerating you. That's a possibility. House arrest could be an alternative to traditional incarceration. It would require Trump to stay within his residence except for an approved activity. That would limit his movement. It would limit his freedom, but it would certainly allow him to conduct necessary activities, including, I guess, his political campaign. The problem is, of course, if Trump becomes president, what happens with house arrest? Does the White House become his house and he can only be in the White House? I don't know. Community service is another possible penalty. It would require Trump to engage in activities beneficial to the community, which is very much antithetical to the way Trump operates. He maybe would have to volunteer for some kind of charitable organization or a public project. Of course, Trump could potentially benefit from doing that. It could look like volunteering. It might actually help him get elected. It could help his favorability. And then, of course, there's the possibility of financial fines. Just as Trump could, in theory, be imprisoned for 4 years for each felony count, he could be fined $5,000 for each count. That'd be $170,000. That's chump change to Trump. If we believe he is a billionaire at all, never mind a turbo billionaire or a multi-billionaire, as he claims to be. So a fine of $170,000 is essentially no punishment at all. I don't think it's the direction the judge will go in. And you could also have probation. Probation means regularly reporting to a probation officer, adhering to certain conditions set by the court. Could be travel restrictions, could be you have to be in certain rehabilitation programs, compliance with a curfew. The logistics of all of that becomes very complicated if Trump becomes president. So I've now laid it all out for you, and I'm going to tell you what I believe Trump is ultimately going to receive. I think the most likely outcome here, if I were a betting man, which I'm not, my sense is Trump does get some kind of prison sentence, but it is suspended. Suspending a sentence means you're sentenced, but the imposition of the sentence, the execution of the sentence is delayed. This would allow the judge and maybe prosecutors to say he was found guilty and he was given a prison sentence. They don't have to deal with the logistics of actually imprisoning him. They don't have to deal with whatever it is they maybe fear would happen if they actually have to go through with imprisoning Trump. But they can say he got a prison sentence. Now, the complexity of this is that if Trump is convicted in other trials, how does it impact a suspended sentence? Depending on how, and this is a legal question that I just did not get a clear answer to today. Depending on how the suspended sentence rules are written and imposed in New York, Trump has already been charged with other crimes. If he is convicted, would that trigger the sentence to be unsuspended in this case? Or is it about not committing further crimes in the future only? And since the alleged crimes in the other 3 trials that Trump could be convicted of are in the past, it would not serve as a trigger in a suspended sentence to go and imprison Donald Trump. I don't know the answer to that. And maybe it's an answer that we will get. So let me know what you think. What do you think is the most likely outcome here? What do you believe is the deserved outcome here? And remember that if your primary concern is not whether Trump is in prison, but making sure that he's not president, and part of that is Project 2025 and what that would mean for the country and the world, remember that we've launched this free white paper. 4,000 people downloaded it in the first 36 hours. You can get the white paper completely free. I'm selling you nothing other than a good time. Get the white paper at davidpakman.com/Project 2025. And let me know what you think Trump's sentence should be by emailing me at info@davidpakman.com.